What's up guys, my name is Ace, and you might remember from the patch notes on the most recent patch that the RPG apparently got a nerf within Warzone. Within those patch notes, they stated that they reduced the RPG kill radius for players with full armor, and this sounds excellent. A lot of Warzone players have been asking for RPG nerfs for quite some time, basically since Warzone launched, because it's often seen as a cheap and sort of spammy way to get kills. So reading these patch notes, that sounds excellent. However, it doesn't appear to be true. If anything, they actually buffed the RPG. And it's not just the RPG that changed. It looks like they actually completely reworked the damage profile on all of the launchers in the game at some point after I made my video breaking down the launchers, which was on April 20th. So I'm not 100% sure if this full rework happened with the most recent update or one of the updates before this most recent update. But in either case, we are going to be breaking down the launchers again and sharing with you guys exactly what changed, because there's quite a big difference with many of the launchers now. So let's just hop right into it and start it off with our maximum damage radius. So this is the maximum radius in which you're able to deal damage to an enemy player with the launchers. So here you can see both pre-patch as well as post-patch. And with the Pila, it looks like it got a very slight buff to its maximum damage radius. The Strela also got a very slight buff in this area. The Joker is pretty much the same, although with the Joker it's hard to test this perfectly accurately because you can't be quite as precise with your shots. And then finally, the RPG did actually receive a small nerf to its maximum damage radius. But overall, when it comes to that maximum hit potential, it hasn't really changed all that much, although a little bit. The next thing I want to look at, though, is the maximum damage value, assuming you aren't getting a direct impact. Direct impacts are completely different. Those will just always kill no matter what. I'm just talking if the rocket explodes right by the person's foot without actually hitting them in the foot, for instance. And as you can see here, with the exception of the Joker, all of the other launchers got a very significant buff to their maximum damage potential. Pre-patch, the Pila and Strela would deal 135 damage, whereas the RPG could deal up to 150 damage if it hit right next to your foot. Post-patch though, they now all deal 250 damage, which is the exact amount needed to get a kill on an enemy that has full health and full armor within Warzone. What this means is before this rework to the launchers, with the Pila, the Strela, or the RPG, you couldn't get a one-hit kill on an enemy with full health and armor unless you got a direct impact hit on them. And even though I've seen people swear that this has happened to them with RPGs, I have watched countless YouTube videos pre-patch trying to find a situation where I could see somebody getting a one-hit kill with an RPG without directly impacting the enemy player, and it just wasn't happening unless they didn't have armor on. And this lines up with my pre-patch testing as well. And what this means is these patch notes just don't make any sense, because they said they reduced the radius that you could get a one-hit kill on an enemy player with the RPG, and before this launcher rework, you couldn't get a one-hit kill with the RPG unless you direct impacted the enemy player. Whereas now, you actually can. So either these patch notes are just straight up wrong and they just lied to us with the patch notes, or I do have one other theory, and that is potentially this launcher rework actually happened maybe with the previous update, without them mentioning it, of course, just like with many of the things they changed in this game. And then now, with the most recent updates, they have adjusted that and slightly decreased that damage radius on the RPG. I kind of doubt this one because, like I said, I haven't been able to find any instances where the RPG was getting a one-hit kill without direct impacting when the enemy had armor, but I did want to mention that this is a possibility. I haven't done any launcher testing since I made that video on April 20th about launchers. So yeah, that might explain these patch notes, but overall, at least since the launch of Warzone, the RPG has definitely been buffed. But in either case, let's move on to the next stat. This is the minimum damage. So this is just on the outer edge where you're just barely able to deal damage to an enemy player. And you can see here, they basically just flatten things out with the Pila, the Strela, and the RPG. They now all deal a flat 50 damage on the outer radius of their damage profile. As for the Joker, it looks like this was actually buffed from 100 up to 150. So taking a closer look, it looks like they actually nerfed the Pila a little bit here. The Strela remained the same, and the RPG, once again, got a bit of a buff in this area. Although, remember, that radius is 1 meter smaller, so it's kind of arguable at that point. You are dealing more damage on the outer radius, but that outer radius has shrunk very slightly. Now, we've gone over the numbers, but that can be kind of hard to visualize, so I did decide to throw a few graphics together that I think make it a lot easier to understand what's actually happening with the damage profile of these launchers. And we'll start it off with the Pila. As you can see here, these circles are to scale with each other, so our overall radius has increased slightly, and it's worth noting that pre-patch with the launchers, it would have sort of a fading effect with the damage, where it would deal the maximum damage up close, and then that damage would just gradually fade out to the minimum damage as you got farther and farther away. Post-patch, though, we have actual step downs when it comes to the damage. So there's no gradual fading. We have set damage rings, basically, within the damage radius. And I did manage to measure these with all the launchers. Our 250 damage range with the Pila is 2.8 meters. Anywhere within 2.8 meters, you will be able to instantly down somebody that has full health and full armor within Warzone now. Then our 135 damage range is 5.5 meters, and this means at that point in core game modes, or if the enemy doesn't have any armor but they have full health in Warzone, you will be able to down them at this point. And then finally, from 5.5 meters to 8 meters, this is where you're dealing a flat 50 damage. As for the next launcher, this is the Strela. We see a really similar story here, although just different numbers. Post-patch, our 250 damage range is 2.5 meters, so a little bit smaller than the Pila. Then we deal 75 damage out to 3 meters, so the damage on this drops off very drastically after 2.5 meters. And then from that 3 meters to 6 meters, this is where you're dealing a flat 50 damage. Now, as for the Joker, like I said, the minimum damage has increased from 100 up to 150. This doesn't really change all that much, though. I guess you're just dealing a bit more damage to an armor user. Now, the exact drop-off point between 300 and 150 damage, I think it's right around 5 meters based on my testing, but like I said earlier, it's really hard to get really accurate, precise results with this launcher, just because it behaves so different from the others. But finally, the launcher you guys have all been waiting for, the RPG. As you can see, our overall radius has shrunk slightly, so it's gone from 10 meters down to 9 meters. But when it comes to our 250 damage range, this is 2.5 meters, so it's actually equal to the Strela. Then from 2.5 to 4.5 meters, we deal 130 damage, which isn't a ton. You're not even going to be able to take armor off of a fully armored enemy within this range, but you still will be taking a big chunk away from their armor. And then finally, from 4.5 to 9 meters, you're only dealing 50 damage, which means you'll take off 1 armor plate in Warzone. Now, bringing this all together, I wanted to put these all in the same graphic like I did with my launcher video from April 20th. And keep in mind, all of this is to scale, so you guys can see just how effective these launchers are in relation to each other when it comes to their damage and their radius. And you can see the Pila, the Strela, and the RPG have pretty much the same effectiveness when it comes to getting a one-hit kill now on enemy players. You don't necessarily have to hit them directly now. You can hit right next to their foot and you can still get a kill on a fully armored enemy. Then, of course, we have the Joker, which is just its own animal. It does its own thing. That thing just deals a ton of damage as long as you can get a hit on an enemy player. But with that, that pretty much wraps it up. I did do some testing just to see if all the handling stats and everything was the same as well. And it turns out this is true. So your reload times, your accuracy with these launchers, all of that appears to be exactly the same as from my video from a month ago, which I will leave that link down below if you guys are interested in seeing more stats with the RPG. Just keep in mind all of those range values and damage values are now updated. And another thing I tested as well within Warzone is the capacity. With the RPG, you can still have 6 rockets in reserve, and I really feel like this is the area they should have focused on when it comes to nerfing the RPG. I honestly think the damage itself to enemy players is fine with the RPG. I don't really have much of an issue with that. My problem is the fact that each player can be carrying up to 6 spare rockets for the RPG, and you can reload an RPG very, very quickly. It's just about 2 seconds or so to reload that. And this means they can just be spamming rocket after rocket after rocket without even technically seeing you. Like if you're behind cover or you get inside a building, for instance, they can just keep spamming those rockets at you over and over and over again. And that's the part that I find to be more annoying with the RPG personally. So if it were up to me, I would keep the damage the same on the RPG, but instead what I would do is I just reduce the capacity down to 3 in reserve. So you could have 1 rocket in your RPG and then 3 extras, and that's it. I think the RPG would still be very viable in that case, and honestly it would still be quite powerful. It would just be a little bit less annoying to deal with. But of course, that's just my opinion on this. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this rework to all of the launchers in the game, and the fact that the RPG technically got a buff, at least from the last time that I tested this, which was a month ago? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.